Hello and welcome to Beyond the Skyline. The podcast is dedicated to topics relating to unidentified aerial phenomenon, disclosure, and experiences of all kinds. I'm your host, Sheila Seppi, with my little dog Willow walking back and forth across my desk. And our guest today for this episode is the Reverend Michael Carter. I'm very, very honored to have Reverend Carter here. And for those of you who may not be familiar with his work, he is an ordained interfaith minister known for his diverse background and contributions to spirituality, anti-racism training, and unique perspectives on the extraterrestrial phenomenon. He is an ordained minister with a passion for spirituality and a commitment to social justice, and he received his master's in divinity degree from Union Theological Seminary in New York. His career has seen him serve as a board certified chaplain at various hospitals in New York and North Carolina, providing spiritual support to individuals in need. Reverend Carter's dedication to anti-racism training during his service with various Unitarian Universalist congregations in New York led to recognition by President Clinton for his efforts in fostering. I want to say right now, I am just so honored to have you here with
Oh,
us because,
this
in addition to your spiritual work, you're a very prominent figure with the explorations of the UAP phenomenon
mhm.
and the longtime UFO contacts. And in your book, The Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible, you reached the #1 spot on the Amazon's best-selling list for the UFO related books. And I think that was in March of 2014.
Mhm.
You also have your expertise has led you to appearances on the George Norrie Coast to Coast radio show and with Gaia TV, with George's show Beyond Belief. And you appear often on the History Channel Ancient Alien series. You have such a vast and diverse background that I don't even know where to begin with you, except for, you want to share with us to open up a little bit about what's on your heart because I have a list of questions that I want to ask you.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you again for having me on the show. And it's like when I hear you going through that, I'm like, who is she talking about? But it's me. But yeah, no, I'm what's on my heart? I have hope going into the future for our planet and for our country. And that doesn't mean everything's going to be, we're all going to sing Kumbaya, but
Right.
I just try to keep a positive attitude and encourage other people to. And, it's a new year. What are we, 12 days into the new year? And so we have choices to make uh, and things to do. And this is the beginning. And hopefully we will put our foot on the path and start that journey.
Awesome. Awesome. So now I know I gave a little bit about your background,
Yeah,
but
you
are
did.
there some other things that you want to share with everyone before I get into asking some questions?
Well, I'm a father. I have an 18-year-old who's looking at going to college. She's looking at colleges now. Um, you know, I'm a partner. I'm a husband. Um, and I am, I'll be 67 years old this year. And I'm like, wow, where did that time go?
Yeah.
So I'm going to encourage people, listen, it's not a dress rehearsal. You've got to, it goes, and I believe in life after life and all that. But I mean, for this particular life, I believe in parallel. I think we could argue that it just goes. And so whatever you're going to do, this is the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is wonderful words of wisdom that we all can
Mhm.
live by. So,
Yeah, it
thank you
goes
for bringing that
fast.
forward. Now, I did want to ask you,
Mhm.
what has inspired you to really delve into the topic of the ancient aliens and,
Mhm.
how did that journey begin? And I also
Wow.
want to ask you, what is your definition of ancient aliens?
Let me answer the second question. My definition is more about paleo contact, which is the theory that humankind has been influenced by off-world intelligences in our distant past. Well, even now. So
Right.
that is my definition, that human history, and I'm using narratives of different cultures to tell us that our ancestors were in contact with off-world intelligences, and that some of those intelligences were benevolent, some of them not so much, some of them just wanted our resources, some of them wanted to see how we would evolve. So that's how I defined ancient aliens. Um, the other question is, I didn't even Sheila, I didn't even believe in this stuff, man. I grew up in the African American Baptist tradition. I was very religious. My parents were and are. And I just, I wanted to be a good son, and I enjoyed church. I enjoyed it for
Right.
what it could be, and I enjoyed going to different houses of worship. And I never watched Star Trek until about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I know people say, well, what rock were you hiding under? But I didn't even
Yeah.
believe it. I remember growing up in Baltimore and someone saying to me, do you believe in extraterrestrial life? And I was like, no, what are you crazy? Are you crazy? And they said, why? And I said, because it's not in the Bible. But
Ah,
then, as I know, I was a foolish young man, but you know what you know. And then um, I started studying, and I'm an experiencer, as you know, that really pushed the ball forward. But I just, even without that, I started reading about, metaphysics and psychic phenomenon. And I had friends who were not Christian, and they were the most dear people I have ever met. And it was hard for me to think that a loving entity would barbecue them in eternity just because they believed different from me. And it just didn't make sense.
right.
And so I started drifting away from the Baptist tradition. Um, and then when I had my experiences, which continue, uh, that was the glass of cold water in the face. And so I started saying, well, these beings visited me. It began in Now I look back, I was probably being visited as a child, but my recollection was December 28th, 1989, and then years after that. So I said, if these people were visiting me on December 28th, 1989, they'd probably been here uh, December 28th, 1989 BCE, and maybe even before that. And
Right.
so I started reading and studying and following my spiritual path. And that's the truncated version, but that's how I got here.
Okay, I have to ask you, can
Yes.
you share a little bit about your experiences with
Yeah, I can.
extraterrestrials?
I can. December 28th, 1980. Well, let's look at it this way. Kierkegaard said that life is lived forward, but is only understood backwards. So, looking back, I was being visited as a child, but I didn't know how to articulate that. I didn't know. I mean, there were always orbs around me. I could see um, auras around people. Had a few nosebleeds. I didn't even know they were nosebleeds. I thought my ear was bleeding. But anyway, I'm looking back now. But December 28th, 1989, I had gone to Mexico with my girlfriend at the time. And we went to the Yucatan to visit the Mayan pyramids at Chichen Itza and Tulum. Fascinating, as you can imagine. And on the way back home, well, going back home, um, we got off at JFK. I was living in New York then, and she said, it's cold, I'm tired. I said, it's cold, but I want to go out. A friend of mine invited me to a get together. No alcoholic beverages were consumed. And I just wanted to gloat. I was golden. My hair was yellowish blonde. Um, and I went. Lovely. We talked, oohed and awed. I wanted to gloat. It was freezing in New York, and I had just come back from 87 degrees. And that night, when I don't know whether I felt someone in the room or what, but when I got up, I turned around and I brought these so you could get an idea. This person was at the edge of my bed. Not in this robe. I had someone make this for me, but in a jumpsuit that looked like Reynolds wrap. I mean, he was about 4 feet tall, if that. I'm saying he may have been a she, may have been AI, but he was there, and around him was a cobalt blue light, and around him was a bright light. And I had never been so afraid in all my life. But my girlfriend wouldn't wake up. And so I just pulled the covers up over my head and got into the fetal position. I am not a macho individual. And I felt, now we were on the 15th floor of the Excelsior Hotel. It's still in New York. I was just there about 6 weeks ago visiting her and some other friends with my family. And the temperature changed. It was like if you were in your home, right? Well, you're in your home right now, and your eyes are closed and you're afraid, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're outside.
Right.
And that's what happened. And I heard this like the wind blowing. Whoosh, whoosh. I finally grew a pair and pulled the covers down, and nobody was there. It was quiet. She woke up. She's a deeply understanding and spiritual person. I told her what happened. She didn't say, "What are you, some kind of nut?" And she had a lot to do with my spiritual journey when we were dating and married. So that was it. But then they started visiting every new and full moon for about 8 months to a year.
Oh, so there was
And
a
they would,
cycle.
listen, I got them. These people, the reptilians, came to visit me. This person came to visit me in 2016. This individual healed a blood clot I had in 2013. It's like, hold on, let me do it this way. He's very pale, Nordic person. And so, but they were coming, the gray looking people, and they weren't really gray, they were kind of chalk white. And they would paralyze me. And they would show me, like one time they showed me a past life as a monk and a high-ranking official in the Catholic Church, which explains my love of religion, all religions. And I wasn't raised Catholic. They showed a future event when I was speaking at a church that happened down the line, and it did happen. I almost forgot, and I said, "Whoa, I've been here." And yeah, and then the other people came to visit. And sometimes they would touch me and they wouldn't talk. They would just say, chill. They would just say, "Not want to hurt you," but just fight or flight. And that started me looking at scriptures, and I started doing Reiki healing, and now I kind of call it space Reiki because the energy has changed every time I see them. And I had someone tell me, they accused me of being a liar, but I gave them some energy, and they were limping, and they came 3 times, and the limp went away. And we were friendly. She was about 75, 80 years old, and she got rid of her cane. And she said, "You're a liar." And I said, "I don't understand." I said, "Aren't you better? What can I do?" She said, "You're calling that Reiki." She said, "Son, I've been doing energy work since before you were born." She said, "That's not Reiki. That's from your friends. That's from those people you know." Yeah. I said, "Well, I don't know what it's from, but I use it." And that has been the journey. I wrote the books, Alien Scriptures, and then I wrote New World If You Can Take It, and then I wanted to get away from, I didn't want to be known as the UFO minister, which I am known of anyway, but so I wrote a book on healing and prayer, and I wrote a meditation manual, and I wrote the handbook Initiation for Experiencers. And my latest book just came out December 3rd. It's a book of sermons. It's called Enlightenment. So, these things have happened, and, I feel like I'm giving something back. I feel like I'm contributing. And that's all I ever really wanted to do. My background, as you know, was as an actor in New York, but I wasn't happy with that.
Right.
I went to New York and I went out to LA. I thought I was going to be Denzel Washington, but I wound up being Reverend Carter. And which is not too shabby. But that's what I really wanted to do, and I'm happy kind of giving back.
That's awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know a lot of times people have difficulty in reconciling their spiritual backgrounds with their exploration of extraterrestrials. And I was just wondering, with all the research that you've done, do you have any key insights or discoveries that you have made while conducting research?
Not more ministers, but there are more people. It's pretty common knowledge that maybe these chariots and whatever in the Bible were ships. So at the time I did it, it was, wow, there's this minister, he's an experiencer. But now I'm looking even deeper, and this is fairly recent. I mean, I talked about this at a UFO conference last September, and so I haven't talked about this a lot. But when I look in the Old Testament, the First Testament, um, our ancestors were telling us, and this is how it affects us today, that again, that they were in contact with these beings, which we would call today an invasion, that the earth was kind of divvied up because you have the Vedic scriptures talking about it in India, you have the Mesoamericans talking about it, you have the Mesopotamian texts, and of course the Bible. And they were trying to tell us that there is an overlay to everything that happens on this planet, and that these beings are behind it. And again, some of them were warriors, and we were caught in the crossfire. If you look at Yahweh, that was one of the reasons I left, uh, you know, Christianity proper, Orthodox Christianity,
Mhm.
because Yahweh is not a nice person.
Right.
And Yahweh is murdering people, and he's ruling by terrorism and war. And it's hard for me to say, this is the same being that's supposed to be about love. This is the same being that Jesus and other avatars and saints are talking about. And so now that scares some people. But once you accept the fact that we live in a populated universe, that we are not the only ones, you have to start thinking differently about what God is, or
Yes.
whatever you want to call it, the force, the prime mover. What I'm just using that word. There are other probably
Mhm,
better words
mhm.
to use. So, and a lot of the trouble that we have now, and the good things as well, are because of our relationship with these beings. And, some of them wanted us to, if you look in the Bible, for instance, if you look in Genesis and you look at the Tower of Babel, which was really a launch pad, we go by because, Elohim is plural. I'm sure you know about all that. And it's been a mistranslation, and it's talking about gods. And these beings are saying they can't do this. We know, because they're going to become just like us. We can't have them with this technology. So they mess up the language, and they do all that. We have that now today. There's some beings who just want us for resources, want the planet for resources, want us to be so dumb that we didn't even know we were naked in the Garden of Eden, which was this laboratory. And then you have some beings in between, and then you have some beings who, like who comes and warns Noah, hey man, if you can't swim, I got news for you. You better start. We don't want to see all of you drown. And we have that now. And we have, I mean, I could go through a list for you, but we have leaders now who've come out and said this. We think disclosure is Biden or Trump or whoever's going to be Caesar in 2024, whoever's going to be the emperor, that they're going to come out on the White House lawn and go, hey, guess what, guys? I got to tell you something. We've been lying to you for 70 plus years, and that some people lost their lives. God bless them and God help them. But nobody's going to do that. Not unless we have like a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, which I would love to see, like they did in South Africa, because I think that's the only
Mhm.
way you're going to get at the truth. But when you look at, I took some notes if you don't mind.
Oh, no, please.
Okay, let me tell you, this is what disclosure is. Okay, I'm not saying there's not going
Great,
to be
because
more.
you've read my mind. My next question was, what do you
This is
believe
this is
disclosure is
disclosure.
about?
This is disclosure. Remember Paul Hellyer, the former defense minister of Canada, claiming
Mhm.
that military intelligence among governments of the world that we wouldn't touch with them. Remember him? He died. Okay, he came out and said that. He
Yeah.
kept saying it.
Yeah.
Nobody medicated him. Nobody locked him up. Nobody said, "What the hell are you talking about?" No. In 2008, Dmitry Medvedev, the former deputy chairman of Security Council of the Russian Federation, on a hot mic, on a hot mic, he said that every prime minister of Russia is given a dossier detailing the space civilizations that we're already in contact with. Putin didn't come out and say, just ignore the man behind the curtain. He just went on. Okay, these are government, high-ranking government. Gary McKinnon hacked into NASA's computers and came across images and text revealing that we were already in some kind of communication, U.S. intelligence and extraterrestrials. He was a Brit. The U.S. wanted him extradited in 2002. Great Britain said, no, that's not going to happen. Not only is it not going to happen, but they changed their extradition laws to protect him. Now, they didn't say what he said was true, but they said. We had Edgar Mitchell. I mean, this is when people are, and obviously David Grutch and these folks, but in 2017, Christopher Mellon used to be the former assistant of defense for Clinton and Bush. He's pushing this. Of course, we can go on and on and on, but they're saying that this has been going on for 70 plus years, which if you do the math, it takes us back to Truman and Eisenhower. There's one other thing. I think you'll really like this one. You can go Google it if you want. In December 2008, Hayam Mashed, he's the retired brigadier general for 27 years, for chief of security for Israel, said that there is a Galactic Federation, that we are in contact with these civilizations. They have some of them have chosen not to disclose. Some of them want to disclose and some of them don't. He says that until we get a better understanding, they're saying until you get a better understanding of space and what space is. But I mean, come on, this man is saying there is a Galactic Federation and we are in touch with, this man has no reason to lie. And of course, there's Elaine Juliet, in France. He's the former head of intelligence there, said that the United States and other countries have been in contact with these beings and that there is a federation. And so that means that they're talking about us. I want to see Earth at the table. I don't want to see Earth being talked about, but they're saying until we reach a certain level of technological maturity, I would say spiritual maturity, that we're going to kind of be in the dark here. But when you have these high-ranking people, and they have to say, if they're saying this, they have a clearance to, just like Brother Elizondo. The Vatican in 2009 talked about that the possibility that we are in contact with. Anyway, I can go on and on. I will shut up. But here you have the Vatican and governments saying this. To me, that sounds like disclosure.
Right, right. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, do you think that any government on this planet is close to announcing disclosure or sharing more information about disclosure?
Well,
An
we know that.
official announcement.
I don't think. I think they're going to drip it.
Mhm.
Because there's geopolitics and who's going to have the technology, because whoever has this technology controls the world, because these
Right,
countries will use it for military
right,
purposes. The answer to your question is, I think they're all close, but they're all talking to each other.
right.
They're all talking to each other. China is talking to Russia. Russia's talking to us. I always found it fascinating that we have this International Space Station and all these countries, they have representatives, right? But we're being told they don't get along down here on the Earth.
Right.
But yet they can all work together in space. It's just curious. But yeah, I think they're all in touch. I think that there's a reason that we're getting all this information now because eventually there may be a sighting, there always have been, but there's going to be something that they can't explain away.
Mhm.
My concern is that we are going to be told that all of them are not helpful, not friendly.
Right.
We keep talking about a national security threat. And so it's like a pickpocket. When you walk into a room, all you see is pockets. Well, when you're when you're in a military mindset, everybody's a potential enemy. And that's what, pardon me, I would hope not happen. And everything is about tech. UAPs, they changed the name, or rose by any other name. But what we're seeing is the military is setting this up where we're the experts.
Mhm.
We changed the nomenclature. They're UAPs. We got all these pilots. And so you don't hear the average person really having any say in this at all. The military has hijacked this whole entire thing, and we're talking about hardware instead of the consciousness shift that will probably help save us. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about weapons and national security and I'm not saying those kind of things are important. People, they have more experience in this than I do. But if you're only looking at it from that perspective, if the only tool you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, let me ask, how do you see post-disclosure world affecting religious structures? Or will it?
It's a,
Will life
it's a
go
great
on
question.
just normal?
No, it will definitely affect it. It's affecting it now, which I think is why powers that be, can't talk about it yet. Because when you look at the Old Testament, okay, we're not talking about the New Testament yet.
Mhm.
And Jesus comes and talks about his father, and you were talking about the Buddhist scriptures and what have you. But you have to say, from my perspective, where is God in the Old Testament?
Mhm.
Ancient Hebrew, primitive Hebrew was not monotheistic. Primitive Hebrew were these human beings worship different gods. There's Dagon, there's Asherah. Of course, they have different names in the Egyptian pantheon, but they're referring to the same thing.
Mhm.
Um, and they're called the Titans in Greek lore, different names in the Viking lore, and Africa, they're different names. But and so they're fighting among themselves, and we're caught in the crossfire.
Right.
And so if you read, for instance, in Jeremiah or the book of Samuel, where they are telling, King Hezekiah was the king he was king in Judaism around 6th, 7th century BCE. And he wanted all of they used to put altars where they encountered beings. And so he wanted that torn down. He was a Yahwist. He worshiped Yahweh. When he died, his grandson, who became king at 8, he was being influenced by the same people that were helping his grandfather. And so they tore down. And Jeremiah laments in the book of Jeremiah, he's angry that these people are not worshiping Yahweh. They are still talking about Asherah, who helped them introduce to beer, sanitation. We got good things from them. The book of Enoch talks about, and so they wanted to consolidate, which is the way they do today. One temple would be in Jerusalem.
Mhm.
One God would be Yahweh. One high priest and one king. Why? Because it's easier to govern. What does that sound like? It sounds like today. Ancient Judaism was not monotheistic. But what King Hezekiah and Josiah did was they tried to take all the references to these other gods out of the Bible. So you only have Yahweh. But when you read the Old Testament, not as God stories, but if you read it as a planet that's being occupied, it makes a whole bunch of sense. And you don't have to worry about, well, how can I worship this God who's killing men, women, and children and telling his followers to do this, that, and the other? That's what's so crazy making. That's why people leave religion, because they say it just doesn't add up. But if you
Right.
look at it from an ancient alien perspective, paleo contact, it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, honestly, I think that the book you wrote, The Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible, is something that everybody really needs to read that's involved with the church so that
I do
they
too.
have an educated understanding of the
Mhm.
true history of this
Yeah.
planet and what the Bible was actually trying to say.
Yes. Yes. And I wasn't the first one to do it. Dr. Barry Downing, a colleague
Mm.
of mine, did it back in '68. And there were some other clergy, not many, and other people writing about this. But I think it would help if a clergy person talked about this, which is what I'm doing. And you see it happening today. If we look at the Middle East, if we look at what's going on in Ukraine, these people all worship Yahweh. It's not a whole bunch of love and mercy. It's about war.
Right.
And because when you look at this, it's not the people that have problems with each other, it's the leadership
Right.
in any war for the most part. When I went to Israel, oh boy, back in '93, '94, I saw married couples. One was Egyptian, one was, I mean, you see that, and they wanted peace, but
Yeah.
it's their leadership who wanted different things. And so, and everybody's guilty up to the you know what. So I'm not picking a side, but this is what wars are about. And usually it's not the people, it's the leadership who want land. They want access to resources. I say we got that, and we got some good things, but we got that from our extraterrestrial overseers because they were fighting among themselves.
Right. Right. There's so much information out there, and the general public is just not aware of it.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering, in your mind, are there like one, two, or maybe even three main topics that you believe everyone should be educated in per this disclosure or extraterrestrial information coming out?
I think, well, the whole topic of disclosure needs to be looked at. I mean, I know people in my church, for instance, they don't even know that their government Congress is having these hearings.
Mm.
They don't even know it. They're in their bubble.
Yeah.
They need to know that. Of course, religion, and I'm talking about comparative religion. Read the stories from other cultures. Read
Mhm.
the Mesoamerican story of the Popol Vuh, when the gods were trying to dumb us down and they wanted us to be slaves. We were noisy. It was too many of us. They couldn't control. So what they did was they got in a ship and they sprayed a mist. This is in the Popol Vuh. They sprayed a mist over the human beings to dumb us down. That sounds like stuff that
Right.
goes on today.
Yeah.
So I would
Biologics.
say, yeah. So I would say anything about disclosure, even no matter how crazy you think it is, go back and look at Roswell, go back and look at the Truman and Eisenhower administrations, what was going on then. And any comparative religious stories, because that's what affects us. Religion has been used, dysfunctional religion has been used to keep us in line, to keep us arguing with people. And listen, I'm a clergy person and I'm telling you this. It doesn't have to be that way. And I think that if you go to like, for instance, Samuel 8, and the people decide that they are going to fire Yahweh. They say, we want a human king. And Saul became that first human king, at least according to the Bible. Um, and when I was a kid, I was like, wait a minute, why, if this is God, why would the Israelites want to fire God and bring in a human king? It just didn't make sense.
Right. Right.
The thing is that Yahweh, they did get rid of Yahweh, and he couldn't destroy them all because then he had no place to rule. Now he did, rule from behind the scenes, governing their foreign policy from behind the scenes. But when I read that story, I say that when we when our love for each other is stronger than our fear of our rulers, we can change anything we want. That's what happened there. They got rid of Yahweh. Yahweh left. Now he was behind the scenes, but they said no. I mean, they said, "What are you going to do? Kill us? You can't kill all of us." Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got such a vast knowledge, a broad spectrum of, public speaking. And I'm just wondering, what's in the future for you? Do you have any big projects that on? Are you involved in any committee works or anything that's happening right now?
It's a great question. I don't know what's in the future for me right now. So you may say, well, what would you like to happen? If there was, I'd like to be able to sit down with my elected officials and talk as one of many other clergy and as an experiencer, because they're not experiencers. And if they are, they're not talking about it. Um, I'm looking forward to probably some more TV stuff just to get the word out there, maybe some more conferences. That's what I really like. And our church is growing, so I'm really kind of looking at that, and that takes up a lot of my time. But I'd like to get the word out more, because again, what I'm saying to you now is pretty fresh to me. I mean, I go in more depth about the kings and queens and bloodlines and all that. But before it was just like, hey guys, they're UFOs in the Bible. And that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm into, what does that mean for humanity? Because I
Exactly.
was just thinking, all of them, not all of them. I never believed all of them were all love and light, but I focused on, because, I had a healing from the Nordic person, healed a blood clot that I had. So some of them treated me well, most of them actually. But there are others that are a little more, less, they're just here for the resource. They're just here to see what they can take. And so we have a balance. When I talk like that, I have some friends, they say, well, you're being so negative. But I'm not being negative. It's right there in the book. Just pick up the book.
Right.
You always got to have a polarity. Everybody's not going to sit here and sing kumbaya with you.
Right.
But it makes me read the Bible differently. I used to read Ephesians 6, where you put on the breastplate and the armor of God. But now when you read that, and they're talking about, because we're battling not just earth, but powers and principalities and beings from the heavens, it makes so much more sense now.
Absolutely.
Because that's what they knew back then, that we lived in a populated universe.
Right.
Peter and Jesus, they knew that.
Right.
But it's taboo to talk about.
Right. The Bible, well, actually, all the ancient texts talk about end times. The Ascension, people now are talking about the shift. Are we getting there through the war? Are we going there through a solar blast? What are
Yeah,
some of your thoughts about that?
I got to tell you, it's a great, again, I'm loving it. Um, when I first started hearing these things, I was coming from the perspective of, you guys just put extraterrestrials where you would put God. They're going to be your saviors now. Okay. And I'm not saying you need saviors, believe me, I'm not. And again, I'm using God. You can put whatever word you want there. And I said, no, that sounds like you're just childish. We created these problems with the planet, with wars and how we treat each other. We're going to have to clean that up. Nobody's coming to help you or me. But I started going back and reading all these religions, and they all talk about a being or beings coming back. There's either been a cataclysm, or there's going to be a cataclysm, and they come down and it's like a reboot. I think there's got to be a kernel of truth in that, because all of the, Hinduism is waiting for the Messiah, Judaism, Christianity, even the Buddhists are waiting for someone. So I think there may be some truth to it. And I would not wait. I would try to make, just live the life that you want to live and try to be as loving, as compassionate as you can, because if it does happen, then yay. If it doesn't happen, yay. But the thing is, there is a cataclysm. The Hopi talk about it. And, you may not be here to see it, but I think there's some truth to it. Otherwise, all of these, there's a quote from a guy named Dr. Howard Thurman. He was a mystic. He was Dr. King's mentor. And he was very open. He was raised Baptist, but he really wasn't theologically. And he said that any truth you find in religion is there because it's true. It's not true just because you found it in the religion. Make sense?
Right.
So I know a lot of Christians who talk about, well, Jesus is going to come back and this is going to happen. And then I say, yeah. And that same story is in the Viking thing with Odin and the same, Native American. And they don't want to hear that because they want to hold on to the uniqueness of it. But all these cultures talk about it. And so there's got to be something. Or they've talked about that it's happened before. If you read Genesis, in the beginning, guess what's already there in the beginning? The earth.
Yeah.
The earth's already there.
Void without form.
Yeah.
What was there before? Why was it void?
Yeah.
Questions I've always asked.
Right. And they did the terraforming. They separated the waters, the ship, I think. And so that sounds like there was a cataclysm before. Exactly. And remember, Plato talked about, he said he was getting his information from, I forgot the priest, the Egyptian priest, who said he got his information from the Atlanteans. So there were civilizations, and we're finding out there, a lot of civilizations we'll never find out about. They're underwater, they're underground. But there were so many civilizations, and Göbekli Tepe is making us rethink where humanity started and how it started. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. But Plato said that every 5,000 years or so, there was a cataclysm and that there was a reboot. This is what Plato said. Okay, 2,500 years ago. So we live in exciting times.
Yes, we do. We do indeed, on many, many levels. And assuming that we make it into a post-disclosure world, do you think humanity's ready for that?
I do. I think but it depends on how it's spun. I think we're tired of centralized government. I think we're tired of 1% ruling over everybody else. I think we're tired of arguing about the color of the skin and who you sleep with. I think people are tired of that. And if these beings, can give us free energy or help us with some diseases and stuff like that, I think that we are ready. But if it's going to be spun that they are our enemies, that you have to look, because a lot of people want our civilization to stay the way it is now because they're making money. They're making money. How hard-headed do you have to get to say that, look what's going on with this planet? Look what we're polluting it, but they don't care as long as ching, 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 ching. So I think we are ready. But I also think, again, going back to the control piece, because that's where we get it from our ancestors, and they got it from extraterrestrials, that we want to keep this where there's one government, one temple, one emperor, or whatever you want to call it. And because it's just easy to control people that way.
Right. Yeah.
I used to not be able to let that in. It sounded too out there. But the more I study and look at it, I'm seeing it now. Yeah. You just want people to be sheep, and you want the have and the have-nots. And, listen, part of the reason people at my church don't know what the government is doing is because they're too busy trying to make a living, trying to live their lives. watching the football game, and I love all that stuff. But how can you not know? This is one of the greatest stories, if not the, in human history. And I guarantee you they don't even know. Or they just poo-poo it. But this is where your tax money's going.
Right, right. Well, there's a lot of thought that once the extraterrestrial disclosure happens, more disclosures have to happen, and
Yeah.
it may be okay. Not so much do we want to keep the lid on the extraterrestrial story, but do we really want to air all of our dirty laundry and the things that have been happening over the course of hundreds of years, the entire history of this country anyway, especially with banking systems, etc. Because once that lid is opened, I think everything is going to start to ooze out.
Well, see, I agree with you. I also would say this, though. The extraterrestrial situation is behind all of it.
Yeah.
It's behind all of it. When you have these black budgets, when the Pentagon says we lost $3 billion, where's that money going? Nobody loses $3 billion.
Right.
Nobody. What's going to these black projects? It's going to, they're sending people up and yeah. And so all of this, I read the Bible that way, that our ancestors were trying to tell us that all of this is there's the elites, and then there's who the elites answer to, which is what Chaim Mashed was saying, right? About this Galactic Federation. That federation is telling Earthlings what they need to be doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what Paul Hellyer was saying. That we've been in, you know what I'm saying? That's what Elaine Juliet is saying. These are they're the highest positions that they have of intelligence and whatever. And again, nobody said, what did he just say? What? They're just putting it out there.
Right.
And then if something happened, they can always say, we were trying to tell you, but you wouldn't listen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plausible deniability.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's interesting. And that's what I'm looking at more and more, delving more and more into, not just that they're out there, but how it affects us, our banking systems, our military, our foreign policy, just our economics. That hand is all there.
Right. Even
And
I
religion, of
believe,
course.
yes, I believe that the common person has seen so much, and some people have come forward, some people have not. The government now has the information about it. It's undeniable that we have had contact, that they're here with us. It's truly undeniable, yet it's deniable. And I
It's
think
deniable.
that,
Yeah.
I think that people are so ready for truth. They're just so ready for a change. And my hope is, I would love to see some type of a disclosure come through. I think people would breathe easy, but I think we also need to be ready for what that post-disclosure world is going to look like. And I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
as a society, we really need to start talking about these bigger issues. How is it going to affect us militarily? How are we going to look at new economies? Are we going under the one world economy? These are huge questions.
Yes. Yes, centralized government is definitely, and right now, we see these wars and rumors of wars. I think people are ready, but again, I think people are ready, period. Next sentence is, but I'm watching these governments, especially my own government, hijack the stories. Now the only people who are credible are the F-16 pilots. The only people are credible are the military. And because if you control the narrative, then you control the story, you control the information.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it's going to blow everybody away, and it's going to make us really have to look at religions, because you got to say, then who or what is God? That's the question. And that's going to be different for everybody, because everybody experiences that different.
Absolutely.
So there's no man or woman no. And so I think that people who want to rule They don't want an educated populace. They don't want you to be educated. They don't want you to be, they want you to be controlled. Back in the day when people took over other people's countries and well, they did it in the Bible. They got rid of all the priests and what have you who weren't Yahwehs because you don't want they get rid of the intellectuals, because they're troublemakers, because they're going to empower the people. You have to get rid of those people.
Right.
You have to silence them.
Absolutely.
And we need more people to say, I won't be silenced. Yeah.
I totally agree. Totally
Yeah.
agree. This has been, gosh, a phenomenal conversation.
This
It
has
has
been
been
wonderful.
so rich, so fun to
Yes.
talk with you. But I'm wondering, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to leave with people? Something that maybe we didn't touch on that's
Yeah. Just to not let people take away your joy, that sometimes you got to turn off the TV or walk away from it. But that life is a beautiful adventure. It really, really is. And you don't want that, lose that, because then you're not going to be able to be any good. So live your life, love, and find out what that is for you. Compassion, spend some time in nature, spend some time alone, hug your loved ones. I mean, we got a rough road ahead, but life is a wonderful adventure. And you've got to grasp it while you got it because it just goes so fast.
right. Right. So, Reverend Carter, people who are interested in purchasing your books, where can they do so?
They can go to Amazon.com or Barnes and Nobles. All 5 of my books, all 6 of those books are there. You can write me at michaeljscarter@gmail. I have a fan page on Facebook, Reverend Michael J. Carter, and I have another page which is Michael Carter, but I use the fan page the most. And email me. You don't have to agree with me. We can talk it out or not. It's up to you, but I will respond. And I'm just wishing everybody um, a wonderful new year.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you again for being here.
Yeah,
Oh,
if you ever want to do this again, or we can go into more
absolutely.
detail, let me know. We can pick scenes from the Bible and unpack those, but
Oh,
let me know. I have no problem with that.
I have pages of questions for you, so I
Then
will
yeah,
definitely
let's set
be
it up.
back in touch.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's set it up. Meanwhile, take care of yourself. Be careful out there in the snow, and you're in a beautiful part of the country. So I'm wishing you and your family a wonderful weekend.
Beautiful. And the same to you.
Yeah.
And many, many blessings
To
to you.
you too, Sheila. You're wonderful. You're good at what you do.
Oh, thank you very much. I
Yeah,
appreciate
I
that.
mean that. So we'll be in touch. Give me a call.
Okay, I will. I've got your number.
Yeah, holler, and we'll
Okay.
set up some.
All right, thank you. So, everyone, you've been listening to Reverend Michael Carter on Beyond the Skyline. So, tune in every Sunday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time for more on UAPs, UFOs, disclosures, and experiences of all kinds. So, until then, keep looking up. Many blessings, everyone. Bye bye.